Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Business Spotlight. It is my pleasure, my genuine pleasure, to introduce Mr. Lee Evans today. Lee is one of the founders of a fantastic business, which we're going to learn all about through this session, called Condor Wines. Now, the background to Condor Wines is a given through the name, but I'm not going to explain that. I'm going to let Lee explain that in a second. Lee and his partner Maria started this brilliant business in 2011, and they have won twice now the Specialist Merchant of the Year for South American wines. So on that note, Lee, I'll hand over to you. Welcome to the Business Spotlight. Tell us all about it.
Well, Condor Wines is a business that was established, as you said, in 2011. My wife and I established the business. We were both working within the industry, both the drinks and the hospitality industry. So a key measure of success in any new business is entering in a market you have familiarity with, and we did. So that definitely helped us. That was in June 2011. We moved out to Argentina for nearly a year to get the business established. We started off with wines from Argentina. Why Argentina? Well, Maria is from Argentina, but also because we could see that Malbec, in particular from Argentina, was doing well in the market, and we saw opportunity in that because we knew there were many Malbecs and producers in Argentina that weren't being represented in the UK. So we decided that was a good idea. So we left our corporate jobs and the safety net of everything that's associated with that.
Wow. Very interesting.
Off we went to Argentina with the idea of Condor Wines. Maria came up with the name. That came a bit later, but just in time to register the business on the 15th of June 2011. And as the name suggests, the condor is the largest bird in South America.
Sure.
I think it might be one of the largest birds in the world. I'd have to double check that, but it flies above the Andes Mountains between Chile and Argentina. Mm-hmm. So the plan was always to then add Chilean wines. Okay. But then as we've grown the business and become more established, we've also added wines from Uruguay. And there are other wines in the region that we'd like to add in the future. But as it currently stands, we're doing quite well with the three countries that we represent. So
that's an incredible story. So there's if we think about the genesis of all successful businesses, they have to be rooted in the space of passion, don't they?
Mm.
You know, so would you describe yourselves as passionate? And if so, what's the one thing that you would say is absolutely what you are passionate about and why you're doing all that you're doing as a team?
Well, I mean, our mantra, our purpose is sharing South America through wine. That's our why. Developed from the principles that Simon Sinek is famous for talking about on his TED Talk.
Absolutely.
So everything we do is around sharing South America through wine. So we're passionate about South America, which is quite a big topic. It's a big area, but it includes the culture, the people, the place. It's an amazing area, a region of the country, the world to visit. Mm-hmm. And we discovered the wines through our visits there. So that's what we're most passionate about, South America. And obviously, I've always had an interest and an enthusiasm for wine. And as I've developed my own career with other companies, it's always had wine as part of it. So it made sense that if we're going to go into a business of our own, it fit with that passion we have for South America and wine, which I already had a knowledge of anyway from my past. So.
Fantastic stuff. Really, really great. So I'm drawn, my mind is going back to the moment where you shared with everybody that you took the steps, both of you, to leave corporate land, to leave the security of the paycheck every month and the job that you knew, to start up a business, right?
It's the most daunting moment. But I think that at some point you've got to believe in yourself and your idea. And okay. and take the step. It was done tentatively initially. I was working for a brewer in the UK. Oh. I asked for a sabbatical My boss and his boss said no, because they didn't think I'd come back. They didn't know anything about my plan. They just didn't think I'd come back.
Okay.
And so that safety net was taken away. But I just really, we just really believed in the idea of, we knew the market was growing. I mean, that makes life a lot easier. If you're selling a product or establishing a business in an emerging market, in a market that's on trend, then it makes life a lot easier. I mean, I'm not saying it's not still difficult, because it is. I'm not underplaying how hard it is to establish a business. And you can still establish a business in a market that's not emerging and is actually could be declining. It's still possible to have a successful business, but certainly a lot easier if you've got a market trend in your favor. So that was I think it was just the belief in that. And obviously we had, we'd saved some money. We had support from our parents. My parents paid our mortgage, I think, for about 18 months.
Wow.
We paid them back eventually. And I, while I was establishing the business, I did a couple of days consultancy, to help pay for some bills. Yeah. So, I mean, we weren't fortunate enough to sort of close and then start. We still had to get help from family and friends, and I had to do a little bit of work in between while we're getting the business started. But even though I was offered full-time jobs at that time, and it would have been easy to say, I'll take it, because we were under immense financial pressure in those early days. I really didn't want to do it, because I didn't want to be 10 years down the line thinking, I wish I'd have done that. And I was in my mid-30s. It just felt like the right moment. If I didn't do it now, I was just going to get, not stuck is the wrong word, because you can have an amazing career in corporate life, and I had a good career up until that point, and I'm sure I'd have carried on. But if I had carried on, I'd have had a lot more to lose, and the gamble would have been maybe too big to make that step to a new business. So it was about that moment, that time. It had to be done at that time. So
isn't this a fascinating conversation? I mean, 2011, we're now 13 years. You're in your 13th year. I think the maths works out, right?
Yes.
So I think we've got to showcase this for a moment. It's a really important point, because no plan B is critical, is it not? Because if you have a plan B, an off-ramp, then you're not going to fully commit, Lee. It sounds like you guys put it all on red 7. You backed yourself, you backed the idea, and you went for it. Clearly you had some help, but of course...
Yeah, we had help. I mean, that's key. And I think family and friends are really important. And, our first investment was from we borrowed some money. It wasn't an investment. We borrowed some money from a friend of ours who had more belief in us than we did. And they lent us a lot of money at that moment. And again, we've paid that back. Okay, quick to add.
You might see the video,
but it is scary when, I remember, it's probably not so easy now, but I remember we had, huge debt on 0% credit cards. Friends had lent us some money, that we borrowed some money from, various, like Funding Circle and other companies. And when you look at it and you think, God, if this doesn't work, it's like you're talking hundreds of thousands of debt. But you'd believe it, and if you don't believe it, you wouldn't do it, would you? Because and often we get to stage when we feel like the pressure of it, and I'll say to Maria, well, if it was easy, everyone would do it, and then there'd be no benefit to taking that risk, would there? So
let me take you back to the moment where you took the decision. You had the entrepreneurial seizure, as Michael would call it in his book, Revisited, or the E-Myth Revisited. What does it make you feel now? What emotions come up to the surface now when you consider that moment of the decision to go? And I guess the second question is, would you do it again?
I can't believe how naive I was, because I think, I'd spent a career in sales, marketing, and purchasing up to senior manager level. I'd grown up in a family business. I'd worked in hospitality to senior management levels. So I'd had lots of experience of, working in businesses and, customer service and finance and everything. But even then I was so naive. But I think there has to be a little bit of naivety when you start your first business. And what you have that what you balance against that is that the enthusiasm and the belief that you have in yourself and in your idea, your product, your service.
Yeah.
And that, so you might not know everything, but you get past it. And do you know what? People will see that you are doing your best, you're trying. And other business owners, some of our best customers have been, entrepreneurs themselves or business owners.
Absolutely.
And they see in you what that desire to do well, and they will support you. And that's what gets you through. And I've made some amazing relationships with customers and suppliers over the last 13 years, because some of them, I mean, when I first went to Argentina and I approached a dozen producers, some of them were among the top 5 in scale, businesses that have been around for over 100 years. And you're going to them with an idea. I haven't got a single customer at that stage, not a penny, or not lots of money anyway. And I've just came with this idea, and so many people just supported us, and believed in our idea and in us. So that's what gets you through, I think, for those dark moments when you don't know how to pay for whatever bill that's coming your way, or that shipment, because we're very much a supply chain business, and
absolutely
getting wine from the other side of the country to this side of the country results in many a sleepless night. But
other side of the world, I guess, to this country.
Yeah, very much so. I remember I did a course back in 2014 with Goldman Sachs. It was called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. I imagine many people would have come across it. Absolutely. I was very lucky to be accepted on the program, and they asked you to come along with an item that signifies how you are at the moment, how you're feeling at the moment, your day-to-day life. And I got myself a candle. I burnt it at both ends and took it in. And in 2014, 3 years into the business, that I was definitely that candle.
What product? What item would you bring now?
Oh God, that's a good question. It took me a while to come up with the candle. So, I'm certainly not a candle. I mean, one of the things that I've been trying to do over the last few years, and the pandemic was a challenging period, as it was for many businesses, but and things had to change at that stage. But I'm trying to get back to working more on the business rather than in the business. And that's a cliche, isn't it? But it's so true. You're not effective. You're not effective for your people or your business if you're in it all the time. Or if you can have those sorts of businesses, and they're probably they're very different types of businesses. But
in reality, Lee, when that happens, you own a job, not a business, right? And that's what the whole.
You maybe are like performing in a job, we've grown the team as well as the business over the last 13 years, and I'm less involved in day-to-day operation than I would have been 5-6 years ago.
So what's the symbol? What are we bringing? An empty bottle of wine? No, not an empty bottle of wine. It's got to be a full bottle, hasn't it?
I think it's one of those sort of magical bottles that fills itself even when you're half full.
I've never managed to find one of those. That's very
so it's like a bottle that just keeps filling up.
Interesting adage, for a successful limited company that is able to function without you, because to a degree there, that would be an interesting, relevant, I think is a better word, image there. Very good. So you've mentioned working capital indirectly several times. So clearly early in the journey, this was a working capital intensive business. You were leaning on all sorts of credit lines and support, which is fantastic. You would not be here today if it were not for working capital. So for the benefit of the listener and the viewer, because they will probably be starting or running businesses that are working capital poor.
Well, you pretty much have to, because in the early days, capital costs money, and the more capital you have, the more it's going to cost you. And that, very, very rarely you can find a source of free money. But I'd say that you have to have cash flow forecasts. I mean, we don't do as much cash flow forecasting. My wife does her own sort of ad hoc style of cash flow forecasting. But in the early days, we had to do it on paper, Excel spreadsheets, because we had limited funds and we had to allocate them correctly. And we had to know when we would need more money and at what point. Now we know the times that we have 2 times of the year, 2 peak times of the year, Christmas, obviously, it's wine, big part of wine sales. And Easter and bank holiday, the Easter and the May bank holiday period, again, it's like a bit like a Christmas surge in demand. So we always find that we have to get a lot of stocking ahead of those. And then, of course, you're then having to pay for that stock. So we then found there are 2 periods of the year when we're most stretched. So we have to plan and resource around those. We used to use things like Funding Circle and other loans like that. We've been approached numerous times for private investment. We've always not needed it. Would rather maintain control of the business. And I kept meeting up with other colleagues in the industry, maybe more advanced in their years in the industry, but in terms of their business. And they would say, how are you financing? And I'd say, we're just financing ourselves and everything. Why are you not using invoice? Why aren't you using invoice finance? And I said, well, I've never wanted to. They more and more I heard, how are you even surviving without invoice finance? And then we actually then brought the bank in and said, look, we keep being told that we should be looking at invoice finance. I've always been a bit skeptical around it. However, let's have a go. So we signed up for invoice finance, and I have to say that's one of the best moves we ever made. And it means that we've always got cash available, and cash really is king. You can't undermine it. Okay, you've got to make profit for a business to have long-term sustainability, and you need sales and good customers and good suppliers, all those other things. But if you haven't got cash, it's like oil. It's like the oil that makes the business run, isn't it? And also, if you don't have a lot of cash, you can't innovate and take risks as well. So,
100%.
So it's really important. I remember reading a McKinsey article a couple of years ago about businesses that succeed during recessions, at a time when capital could be quite tight, and basically you have to keep your house in order. You need to make sure you've got good margins. Don't drop your pricing. You need to come out of a recession really healthy so that you're ready to take advantage of the surge. And so that's kind of been our strategy the last couple of years. Keep our costs down, manage our stock levels, make sure we've got the right price, make sure we've got the right margin, and that's why we're doing so well at the moment. We're just we've got our house in order, and I'm sure in 6 or 12 months or 24 months something else will come along that will shake the house, and we need to address it. But
be ready for
definitely
it.
Long and short of it, cash is king, and just be careful with credit, because your idea of debt, your values around debt, like if I owe somebody money, I'm thinking about how am I going to pay that back. But not everybody has the same values as you, so you need to think about that when you're selling things to people.
Absolutely.
They may not have the same values around debt, and do you know what? You need to consider that. Don't be scared to step away from a customer if they don't share those values. And it's so. Somebody told me early on, it's like, okay, so that invoice for £1,000, would you give them that cash now out of your pocket? And if the answer is no, why are you giving them an invoice for £1,000? Because it's the same. So, that's so important. That's so important. So, and touch wood, we've not had a bad debt in 13 years. I've cursed myself now, haven't I? So.
No, not at all. No. Erase it from the whiteboard in your mind, Lee. Get rid of it. That's gone.
Yeah, I've definitely cursed it now.
So you give people a brown box. with beautiful branding on it, and they give you money, right? It's as simple as that. That's how it should be. But of course, the reality is different for some people out there. They're struggling with it. A couple things to pick up on from what you said for the listener. Number one, invoice financing. Really very, very, very interesting topic. For many businesses listening, invoice financing will not be the solution because of the trade-off.
No, it doesn't work for every business, because you have to be.
That's right.
If your business is declining, then that negative force makes invoice finance really difficult. So because the money is reducing that's available. But yeah, it does. If you've got quite a steady business and some growth, then, or even fast growth, invoice finance, because the more you sell, the more you can borrow. And
absolutely, absolutely,
so it does work, but it's not for everyone. It wasn't for us in the early days. I didn't want to be tied to it.
I understand that. Yeah.
In the early days.
Fascinating. So we talk a lot about leverage and using money to make money and various other topics. So you're playing into that space beautifully. The other piece that I wanted to just elaborate was exiting recession. You mentioned keeping your business tightly under control, managing price, managing margins, being ready for the boom or the uplift at the other side. You know what? I agree totally. I just want to add one more thing, or at least get your thoughts on it, is your competition may not have been as smart as that. So you also need to be ready to capitalize there, don't
you? Yes. I mean, we're a niche business. So, you know, we are selling wine that's quite a small proportion of total wine in the UK. So, you know, the big categories are Spain, Italy, France, Australia, South Africa. I mean, Chile is actually quite sizable, so I'm not underplaying what we've got, but we're not, you know, we are quite a niche business. So we're very targeted in who we are, who we're selling to, and we're not trying to be all things to all people. Perfect. And I think when things get tight in this sort of industry, trying to be all things to all people becomes really difficult. So I think that it's really important to have a very tight focus, and it doesn't have to be a niche, but if you've got a business, try to, you know, discover your why and stick to it, because that will draw people to you. We do watch our competitors. I think one of the things that coming out of a recession strong would be interesting for most businesses, particularly if they're like our stage where we're doing well, is the opportunity for acquisition. That's something that we're keeping an eye on. We haven't acquired anybody before, but I know there could be opportunities out there. I'm a little bit concerned about the cost of debt at the moment, because obviously with interest rates being quite high, but the cost of recession, but also some of our customers are rationalizing their supply base. So it's making sure that you're close to your customers. In fact, I had an MD that was my MD at the brewery I used to work for, and he said, stay close to your customers, because if you don't, your competitors will.
Oh, so isn't that interesting?
Coming out of a recession, you need to stay close to your customers, because they're going to be under pressure to rationalize and, you know, during the recession. So you need to make sure that of the 1,000 wines or 500 wines or whatever they have on their portfolio, they're not looking at your wines to take out. They're looking at your competitors. So that's why it's really important to stay close to your customers. You know, I mean, cash is king, customers are king, lots of kings in an industry, but I think customers are so important in terms of, because if you're not close, you don't know what's happening. And then if you don't know what's happening, you can't change, you can't stay, you might not be relevant if you don't monitor what's happening. And actually cash flow, and, you know, going back to the finance question, it's also important to stay close to your customers, because you can see what's happening with them, and you can notice if, you know, if they're going through a period of growth, if they're going through a period of decline, if they're having any cash flow issues themselves, then you can be ready to support them or make business decisions accordingly. Absolutely. And the same is true with your suppliers as well. Stay close to them, because if they've got cash flow problems, that's going to have an impact on you too. So you really need to stay close to your producers, your suppliers, and your customers. And then also, when you have cash flow problems, and, you know, I'm not saying that we don't currently, but sometimes there are periods of the year when we're a bit tighter. If you've got those relationships, then you can lean on those relationships as well to help your cash flow. So,
mm-hmm.
I mean, during the pandemic, my God, a lot of our wines were sold into UK hotels, pubs, and restaurants, and the Prime Minister announced they were being closed, and we were like, ah!
Yeah.
And suddenly we've got way too much stock in the warehouse, too much in the pipeline, customers that wanted to send stock back or delay payment, suppliers that were
Happy days, eh?
So at that point, I think the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, I just was constantly on the phone, speaking to customers, speaking to producers, just trying to find out what was happening. And, that staying close to your customers is so important. And as I grow the business, it becomes harder as well, because I'm not account managing every customer like I did originally. Yeah. I've now got, 3 or 4 people that manage different accounts. And so I've now got to stay in contact with the customers, but I'm now not their direct contact.
Of course,
yeah. So that therefore makes it even more important to stay in contact with your team and make sure they're in contact with the customers. And obviously the bigger customers, you make sure you've got a line of communication. But
so that's an interesting point you mentioned there. We're gonna talk about that in a few minutes' time. Let's pick up on it now. Team leadership and management, driving results through people, leveraging people. How do you make sure that your team are able, make sure that your team are on it? How do you hold them accountable? Talk to us about that, Lee.
Well, firstly, it's about recruiting the right people. That's not easy. I think we've got it wrong a few times. And a few of our customers have even made us aware of that before even we were aware. Okay. But I think at the moment we've got a really good team in place, and I trust the people that work for us, and they're the right people. So we start. I remember when I first started the business, and I'd come from more of a drinks industry, but beer. I've done wine, but I was very much beer focused. So when I was recruiting, I was sort of being distracted by somebody with loads of wine experience, and I then had to remember to stop and say it's actually about attitude, finding the right people with the right attitude. And if they haven't got all the skills, then don't worry, because they will get that in time. Somebody with the right attitude is going to spend the time to develop their skills. Absolutely. But somebody with the skills and the wrong attitude, they're just never ever going to get there because they have the wrong attitude. So recruiting the right people with the right attitudes, that's how I make sure we deliver the right results. People that I know are going to get on with our customers, people that have demonstrate the values that we have in our business, and that's how we recruit and have done, fairly successfully over the last few years. So I think that's why we make sure we deliver. And then outside of that, we have sales team meetings. We have regular updates, one-to-ones. I recently started before Christmas. I think it actually came from Simon Sinek, actually, that comment that because we're not in the office, we're all remote. We all work remotely. We've got an accounts person, a supply chain person. We've got salespeople. They're all out on the road. There's 8-9 of us in total. So on a Monday morning at 10:30, we just have half an hour, no agenda, no expectation of what's going to be discussed. We just have a half an hour, and we might talk about our weekend. We might talk about something that somebody's planned for that week on a personal level, but we might also talk about pricing that's been released that week, or the accounts lady might not have been able to get hold of the sales guy, and we'll say, oh, so-and-so, can you give me a ring about so-and-so customer? So we have this half an hour on a Monday where we just, it's an open agenda, whatever can be discussed. And that's been really useful to sort of bring the team together. And then we get together for in the summer and at Christmas. And I go out and meet them, and I go out to see customers with them as well. And everyone has written their own SMART objectives, in terms of how they're going to manage their region for this year. We had a sales meeting last week going through that, where they all came here. We work from home. This is a home office. But the only input from the SMART smart objectives is they have to go through them with me, and then I tweak them with them, and they have to make sure they sort of fit with the overall business objectives. So I'll set the overall business objectives, the overall strategy. Then I just make sure the guys have got objectives that complement that strategy. So if I say we need to win 30 customers this year in these different channels, and that's something we did quite early on. It's very important as well. We segment our customers. Then I make sure that through the sales team, those 20 are all being picked up, and obviously a couple for me too. So that's kind of, so we do a lot of planning in that respect. And I spent 5 years in marketing. So we have a lady that works for us on a consultancy basis. She does 3 to 4 days, maybe 2-3 days a month, who's an ex marketing director, and she's fantastic. She keeps us all in line, and we have an ongoing marketing plan that we do every year as well. So and she's key as well. Again, she came on board because she left the business we used to work with together. I contacted her because I know she's got the right attitude. And I said, I want her in my business. So
you can see that listen, before, what listeners and viewers don't understand is that prior to this call, this interview, we were discussing the differences between level 1, level 2, level 3 businesses, right? So it's clear that you're, Lee, a level 3 business owner, which is fantastic. Now, again, it pivotal to level 3 business ownership is the fact that the machine is able to function day to day without you. So team, we've talked finance, we've talked cash, we've talked team, we've talked strategy, we've talked vision. Tell me, you've touched on marketing just then. If we could isolate one aspect of your business that was above all else quintessential, that you have to get right, what would it be?
I think it's relationships. I think that the relationships you have with your team, the relationships, I mean, it's one word, but it goes across different areas. But the relationships are sound relationships with your producers, the people that are making wine, sound relationship with the suppliers that bring it over, sound relationships with the team, relationships with the customers. Right. I think it's those relationships, and they're built on trust and integrity. And I think that is so important. And every competitor has a different level of how they manage that. But that's how we do it, through our relationships. I think it's the relationships. And as the business grows and I'm less directly involved in all of those relationships, it's just making sure that I've got the relationships with those people that are managing those relationships. There you go. So I think probably relationships.
So there's the leadership and management, the key word. So again, for the spotlight listener, viewer that's following the series, let's just tie what Lee's just said there into a key subject matter, and that is that marketing is anything and everything that touches a prospective or existing client. So it's everything. It's the whole business. And it feels to me like Lee's business, in this instance, Lee, is a marketing-driven business that is also a first-class wine importer. So for me, relationships links directly into marketing. You're marketing to your
definitely. I'm
suppliers.
I'm a marketeer at heart, really. Yeah. So I mean, a fun day for me is focusing on marketing. So sales too. I like my sales as well. So I think when we established the business, it was very much about sales, because you haven't got a business unless you can sell something. Mm-hmm. So I was a sales guy that drove up and down the UK in a car my parents lent me the money for, little Ford Fiesta. My God, that did some mileage. It went from Scotland to Cornwall and back again. And if somebody wanted to buy wine or want me to present the wine or attend an event, I was there in my little Ford Fiesta. It went all over the country. So sales was paramount. Early doors sales. We had no money for marketing. Maybe I go to the odd event, but there's no money for marketing. So, and yes, there were, social media 13 years ago was important, but not like it is now. So you didn't use it in the way you would now. Yeah. And so it was really about just knocking on doors and getting distribution, filling that pipeline. And then as the business evolves and I want to communicate my business to customers and potential customers and our producers too, because we represent them in the UK. So we have to market to them too and let them know that we're doing a good job for them.
Exactly.
So yeah, marketing is very much so. Yeah, there's that. As businesses mature, they do become or can become more marketing orientated.
100%.
But we're working with wineries that are production orientated, so that's often a challenge. Although some of them are very good at marketing as well. But yeah, I'd say that marketing, we have monthly marketing meetings, and yeah, marketing's a big part, and it's a topic I like to read about and learn about, as I do with business too.
I can see that, Lee. I can see that. And this professional that you have, again, very few businesses that are interviewed through the spotlight would have gone to the extent of having somebody with real gravitas and heavyweight marketing experience on their team. That doesn't, you see, nothing is down to surprise or luck. Everything you have is a reflection of you and the way you're running your business. So again, for all the listeners here, take on board what Lee is saying and sharing today. Lee, I've got one more question for you. Talk to me about visualization now. How did you and how do you visualize, bring to life the image or of the future for your business and for your life? How do you articulate that, A, to yourself, and B, to other people?
We have a vision. So, we as a team, we all got together in July last year in Stratford, which is a lovely place to have a team meeting. If everyone
Absolutely.
We even went down the river later on. And I said to the guys, because I wrote a vision, mission, values back in 2013, 2014 as part of the Goldman Sachs program, which is a key part of your business plan. And I said, okay, that was different then. It was only Maria and I running the business at that stage. Well, pretty much, I think I might just employed somebody back then. And now it's us. There's more of us. We're a team. We've got different functions. What does the business? What's the vision? What's the mission? What are our values? And the only stipulation I made is it had to be underpinned by sharing South America through wine. Okay. And we wrote our vision, and our vision is basically to be the first choice for South America. So, if a customer or potential customer out there is looking to, amend, change, add, or do anything with their South American portfolio, they should come to us, and we will be the #1 South American wine specialist in the UK. And that's why, we went for the awards in 2019 and 22. We haven't gone for it for the last 2 years. Actually, we've been we don't go for it every year, because I see we don't need to go for awards every year, and some years we have more to say than others. So we'll have another go next year. But
very good.
I think that the key thing is if I have a vision, it's just that we are a strong, healthy, fun business to do business with. That's really, really core for us.
So the big takeaway there for the listener is that you brought your team together to do this. This was not you imparting upon them the vision. You built it as a team, really interestingly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm managing director. Together with my wife, I'm an owner.
Of course.
So ultimately, the buck stops with us. Sure. But we have to accept that we're now not just us anymore. And how am I going to implement a vision and mission and values without their involvement? It just doesn't. They're not going to buy into that, are they? Oh, Lee's telling me to do this, and whereas they've actually helped to write these. So if they don't like them, they can come back to me and tell me. But they will like them because they wrote them and they bought into it. I mean, I think management is often about being the train driver, isn't it? But train drivers not in a job if they haven't got anyone to carry. So you need to make sure they get on the train. So that's really important. So
It's interesting as you speak there about management. I actually, with due respect, I hear leadership also in there, not just management. You
Yeah,
clearly
leadership
a
too.
leader of vision. You're an inspirational leader. You're a leader that's pulling people together into one place. But I must say, massively to your credit, Lee, and again for the viewer, you're also an adept and effective manager, because the management, the dark art of management, is about getting results through people, not yourself. And that is not easy to do.
And,
So,
and I'm still learning. You know, we are.
well, we all
Every
are.
time I,
So that's
you know,
okay.
we're all learning, aren't we? And you were saying earlier before we came live on the recording about you know, how would I look 5 years ago watching somebody like me talking about how they got to where they were.
That's
And I
right.
said to you, I'd still be that guy on the train listening to that person speaking, because I speak to people all the time and listen to people, and you know, you're always learning, and with people, they're changing all the time too. So you know, you have to stay on top of those relationships, and yeah, and manage.
Be a sponge, not a rock, right?
Yeah, be a sponge, not a rock, definitely.
So we're going to close down this interview in a minute, Lee, but just to recap, there's been 2 or 3 learning opportunities in terms of written material for people from this brilliant interview. And I would just allow me to recap quickly for the viewer, for the listener. The first book that really springs to mind was Your Finding Your Why by Simon Sinek, which is an
Yeah.
excellent book. Second book to come through for me was The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, which was really relevant. That's the in versus on scenario. And
Yeah.
I also was hearing links back to Branson's material around um, having steadfast focus on values, on your values, and making sure that you remain true and authentic. So for everybody watching or listening, please go find Richard Branson's books, Michael Gerber's book.
Losing My Virginity, isn't it? I think I've
Yeah,
got a copy
and
on the shelf.
also Finding My Virginity, which is a
Oh, is
very
it Finding
effective
My
book.
Virginity?
That's the second one. Losing was the first one. Finding,
Oh, right, okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
really, really good stuff.
I think that yeah, there are so many great stories among entrepreneurs, aren't there? So I like to seek them out and read about them too. So
Absolutely. And by the way, whilst it's on my desk and we're talking here, that is the book that the Sponge versus Rock comes from.
oh, does it?
That's,
I've got that on my shelf. I still haven't read it.
well, now you know what your homework is. Lee, it's been fantastic to meet with you today and to interview you and share with everybody listening and watching only a little bit of your story. And what I'd like to say is, once we perhaps a little time flows by, it would be great to get you back and open up a little more and learn a little more, because there's clearly some fantastic things happening at Condor Wine. So congratulations on a journey and job well done so far. And thank you for joining in.
No, thank you. Thank you. Very lovely to meet you, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.